Okay, so I'm back with part 2 of my complaints about the lack of good television on in the summer. So TNT is doing a remake of this show called Dallas. I wasn't really familiar with it because it was mostly on before I was born. So I went back and watched some of the original episodes and some clips of it online. Well, it's actually a pretty good show. It's kind of comical now. It was probably more dramatic back in 1980, but now it's just funny to watch. I mean, you actually see people talking on payphones. When was the last time you even saw a payphone? And they get in their car and they tell somebody else to make a phone call for them because they can't do it when they're in their car. They don't have cell phones. The only thing worse are the original episodes of Star Trek where you see Captain Kirk. He's talking on his communicator, which looks like a big old-fashioned cell phone from the 90s. And they never explain how he was able to time travel back to the 90s and steal it from somebody. They never explain that part. So there's a lot of funny stuff on Dallas, but mostly it's the hairdos people had back then. And they wore those old jeans that had the flare. We call them flare now. Back then I think they called them bell-bottoms. And then there's the guy who was supposed to be the heartthrob, Patrick Duffy. Until recently, I only knew him as this old guy who sometimes popped up on my soap operas as somebody's meddling father-in-law. But apparently back in 1980, he was this big hunk. But he had this ridiculous mop of hair. It was like growing into his eyes. He looked silly, but apparently that was the big thing back then. So I started watching the new version of Dallas that they've got on TNT. I gotta tell you, Larry Hagman, he's great. He was great on the original show, and he's great on this one now. He has the funniest facial expressions, and he gets the best one-liners. And this is my favorite line from either show. It's from the original Dallas. It was in 1980, and this was one of JR's great lines. It's still true today. He says, you know, it's hard for a man to keep a mistress and his seat in Congress. Do you think that's still true today? Maybe we should ask John Edwards if that's still true today, because I kind of think that it is. So I'm going to keep watching Dallas on TNT and keep watching the original episodes because I'm getting a real kick out of them. And this, you can see they're on the AARP magazine. I find this interesting. My mom gets this magazine, but it's not because she's old. They send it to her by mistake. So apparently they're trying to go after the old crowd with this show, which is weird because I think people my age would find a show like this hilarious. And they've actually managed to hire some younger actors. One guy is really, really hot. The guy who plays Bobby Ewing's son, totally hot. I guess he's like the heartthrob that Patrick Duffy was in 1980. So they're really going after the young crowd, and yet they're trying to publicize the show with this, the AARP magazine. But I'll be back with another review of Dallas next week.